Good morning, everyone. We want to welcome you today to today's webinar. We've got approximately 100 people tuning into this today, and we're quite excited to engage with you on this platform. It's a new approach for EPA in our ability to interact with key stakeholders such as yourselves, and so we hope it works well for you, and we'll be keen to hear your feedback on this method. So my name's Tim Farriger. I'm the Manager of Development Assessments Unit at EPA. Our team looks after all the approvals and licensing functions. And with me today, I've got the project team leading EPA's work on periodic license reviews. So you can see we've got Emily. Emily's going to be leading today's presentation and taking you through the detail of the program ahead. We've also got Madeline and Belleville, who are here to assist during the question time. So just a couple of housekeeping things in terms of today's format. If you want to ask questions during the presentation, feel free to do this at any time. You can go to the right-hand side of your screen and click on the little bubble and type in your questions there. Or if you're on a mobile device, you can click on the questions icon at the bottom of the screen. We will try to address as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation, and those that we don't get through, we'll put some more information up on our website at a later date. So today we're going to be covering the following topics. We're going to give you some background and program overview. We're going to talk about the benefits of the periodic license reviews, and also importantly, we're going to talk about how you can get involved. So on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see EPA's vision, and that is that we will have a healthy environment that supports a livable and prosperous Victoria. As you would know, as licence holders, licensing is an integral part of EPA's toolkit and our approach to deliver this vision. And periodic licence reviews are critical to ensuring that we maintain current licences that ensure the environment is protected in line with our vision. Just to clarify, many of you will have heard and seen in January about the government's response into the independent inquiry of EPA. This program that we're talking to you about today, the periodic license reviews, is something that was already underway and is not directly connected to the government response. So I'm going to hand over now to Emily, who's going to run you through the detail of the program and how you can get involved.
Thanks, Tim. Good morning, everybody. So let's go into a bit more detail on the background for this program. So as you're probably aware, when a site is scheduled premises, you usually need to have an EPA license, and it looks like what you can see on the right-hand side of the screen right now. These licenses usually cover the operation of the site and set operating conditions, waste discharge limits, waste acceptance conditions, etc. At EPA, we have about over 650 licenses, which include over 190 conditions. And this project already started last year, around September 2015, covering a first sector, which was the landfill sector. And in this year and a half, a bit more than a year, we started by covering 84 landfill sites. And the final licenses are being issued right now. So what are we going to be looking at this year? Which conditions are proposed for review? So all licenses conditions are split in 3 different levels that go from really broad, covering all types of sectors. So that's the standard conditions with a format like LIG1, for example. And then you go into more and more specific conditions with sectorial conditions or even site-specific conditions. Today's webinar is going to be about the standard conditions, and all conditions are split into different types. So you have, depending on the formatting of the condition name, general conditions, amenity conditions, discharge to air, discharge to water, discharge to land, and even waste management and waste acceptance conditions. So let's look at the benefits and the drivers behind this project. The idea is really to improve license conditions. Some of the drivers behind this are the changing landscape. So the environment is changing and community standards are just getting higher. The expectations for, clean air, safe environment are growing. Additionally, science is providing us with more information on some pollutants, for example, that weren't really on our radar before, and we need to take into account now. Some of the benefits of this project. We want to set clearer compliance expectations for license holders. We want to make sure that when you're looking at a condition, what you have to do to be compliant with this condition is as clear as possible. In turn, this will allow us to really know when we need enforcement actions to make sure that non-compliances are addressed. 2 years ago, approved boards, and additionally this year in the annual plan 2016-2017, we have support in the sense that EPA has now committed to introduce a process to review both all the licenses and all the standard conditions. So now to the most interesting bit, how can you get involved? As mentioned before, all the licenses, so over 650 of them, will be impacted by the changes that we're going to make to the standard conditions. Now is your chance to have a say on the changes that we're going to make. You can provide us with feedback on the conditions, the ones that, for example, you have trouble understanding, all these kind of things, and you can provide us with feedback until the 16th of March 2017. A bit more on the timing before we jump into detail of how you can provide us with feedback. So we are now in the middle of the external engagement period. 16th of February is our webinar today. You have until the 16th of March to provide us with feedback, knowing that the next stage would then be for us to work internally on the conditions, taking into account your feedback, but also the feedback provided by the environment protection officers, so the members of EPA that are going on site for site inspections. Afterwards, the implementation stage is going to start starting in July. The reason for this is as we're updating the whole cohort of licenses, so over 650 of them, we don't want to do changes right before the annual performance statements are issued, just to make sure that we get clarity on which license you have to be compliant with. Now, let's dig into the type we're going to be making. And the goal is to try to have conditions that are as clear and easily enforceable as possible. I want to make sure that the conditions can be complied with. And the proposal that you see on the screen right now is based on an internal round of feedback, but it's just a proposed wording. So if we're looking at LIG4, for example, which most of you will have on your licenses, you can see that the current So this condition is about the obligation to keep all the documents and monitoring records that you've used to prepare your annual performance statement. And initially, the condition stated that it must be retained at the premises for 7 years. Now, we are well aware that for most premises, you wouldn't have the storage space to have 7 years of documents and monitoring records. So we are changing this condition to remove at the premises and turn this into be readily accessible, to allow you, for example, to just pull up your records on a computer and not necessarily have the printed version available on a site visit. Now let's go through the process of how you can provide us with feedback. If you use the web link that is on the screen right now, you will get to our project page. And on this page, so I'm just going to take you there now. I'm sorry, a little technical problem. Okay, so we have set up a feedback system that is quite easy for you to access. The idea being that for each condition, we are going to propose, so the question will be, here's the current wording of the condition. Here is the proposed wording for the condition. Do you have comments on this, or are you okay with it? Okay, thank you. So, okay, if you go on our website, that's where the link is going to take you. You can see that on the first part of the page, you can click on Submit your feedback. And if you do click, it will take you to this feedback form. So there's a bit of introduction on what the project is about. And just for your information, the current webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the webpage when we're done. And you will be able to click and look at it again. Regarding privacy information, the answers that you will provide may be shared on the EPA website because we want to share our answers to the questions that we've received, but the name and company details will not be disclosed. One piece of information that is quite useful, this survey is, depending on how many conditions you want to comment on, this survey can take you quite a bit of time. So if you want to stop at some point and start again later, you can. Just make sure that you always click save and continue. And then if you want to come back to finish it up, you have to use the same either computer or the same mobile device to come back to it, and it will take you to where you left it. All right. The first question is for you or other license holders to tell us if you've joined the webinar or not. We'd like to collect a little bit of feedback because this is one of the first times that EPA is running this type of webinar. So it's just a couple of questions on if you think the presentation was interesting, the topic was relevant, the format is appropriate, and you have room for any other comment if you wish to provide us with that. And then we're starting with the conditions review. So we are reviewing around, I guess, 35 conditions. If you do not want to go through all of the conditions, I would suggest that you take a look at your license, look at which conditions you have on your license, and then select the conditions that you want to review. You can select all of them, all the different types of conditions that I mentioned before. There's a bit of explanation on top if you're not really sure what each type of condition covers. For the sake of this example, I'm going to say no to most of them, except for the waste acceptance conditions. And when you're clicking no, it skips the page with the detailed condition of this type. Just for information, this page contains mandatory questions. It's just to save you going through all of the other conditions if you don't want to. All right. So we're now in the waste acceptance conditions page. You have here a couple of questions that you want to answer, or maybe not. So here we have two conditions, WA1 and WA2. As you can see, and as I mentioned before, you always start by having the current wording and then the proposed wording. We're always highlighting the changes, either by scratching down a line or by highlighting it in red. So let's say, no, I don't have comments on this one. And on the second one, waste accepted at the premises. Okay, I think it's a good condition. Feel free to put positive feedback as well. Okay. And then once you've answered, once you've seen all the pages that you selected initially, you have one last page on if you have any other comment. If you feel like you wanted to comment on something, but it wasn't covered in the questionnaire, go for it. And a thank you page, which can bring you back to our webpage. Or if you want to get in touch with us, don't hesitate to call or email us and we'll get back to you. Okay. Now, that is it on our side for today. That's the presentation. Maddie, did we get any question in the meantime?
Okay, so we've got a few questions here. The first question from a license holder is, will I receive another chance to provide final comments? Emily, would you like to answer that?
Yes, thank you, Maddie. Considering the number of licenses that we will be reviewing, we are really trying to focus the feedback that we will receive between now and the 16th of March. It is your key time to provide comments. Once the final wording of the conditions will be decided, you will be advised of the changes that will be made and of when you will receive an amended license.
Thank you, Emily. I've got a couple of questions. I'll just have a look at them. One moment.
Thanks, Maddie.
So we've got a question here, where can I access reviewing our license? So I'm assuming that means where can you access the feedback form?
Yes. So you can use the link that was, I think the link was actually provided in the webinar invitation as well, or this webinar will be made available as well. And the link itself, is this URL, so epa.vic.gov.au/license reviews. And then on that page, you can follow the link for the feedback form.
I've got a couple of questions here about will the license management publication 1322 be updated, and will this be out at the same time with the changes?
Yes, that's a good question. We rely heavily on 1322 license management guideline to make sure that the compliance conditions, let's say, are clear. So of course, these and other guidelines will be updated and will be provided at the same time as the issued licenses. Tim, you'd like to add something?
I might just add something to that, Emily. As you're providing us feedback, you may want to indicate further detail that might help you that we could add into the guidelines as well. So obviously our intention is to make the conditions as clear and as understandable as possible. The guidelines then add further detail to clarify what you need to do to comply with that condition and what it means, etc. So in some cases you may have feedback that perhaps isn't specific to the wording of the condition, but it might be specific to the supporting information that's in the guidelines. So we're really keen to hear that as well.
Great, thanks Tim. So we've got a few questions here about if they can access the conditions in PDF or just in a Word document with all the changes on our website, separate to the survey.
Yes, we actually have an Excel spreadsheet which contains the current condition and the changes highlighted, and we can circulate that. We will make it available on the website as well.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
All right, so we've got probably a few more questions. If you do have any more questions, I'd suggest you type them in now so we get a chance to answer them. So we've got one here, will you provide an amended license for review?
So the feedback, as mentioned earlier, most of the feedback should be provided now because again, as we will be editing over 650 licenses, it will be extremely difficult to make any changes around September, which is when we expect to be issuing licenses. So I would say if you have comments, really make sure that you look at the conditions right now and provide us with your comment.
Okay, so we don't have any more questions coming through now. Please feel free to submit some more if you have them. We do have a question here. Will the reviewed standard conditions cause any additional cost to my operation? Emily?
That is a really good question, Maddie. What we are doing now is reviewing the conditions for clarity and really wording itself. The intent behind the standard conditions will not change, which means that the obligations related to the conditions will not change either. So there is no cost expected with the review of these standard conditions.
Oh, hi, I've got one more here. If you can answer this one. How will the feedback be considered? Who will decide the final wording of the condition? I think that's what I was trying to say.
Thank you, Belle. EPA will, of course, decide on the final wording, but we are looking at a number of parameters to finalize the wording of the conditions. Of course, we're looking at the key principles of license conditions, so they need to be clear, enforceable, follow EPA policies and legislation. And we're also going to be looking at if they're easy to understand, so in plain English. And we will respond to all the feedback that we will receive, even if the condition wording has not changed, and we will justify changes and non-changes.
And I guess it's fair to say, to add to that, Emily, what we're trying to do with these standard conditions is they're pretty much rolled out across the board. So we're looking for consistency across our licence cohort and really trying to ensure a level playing field across the board. So, you know, they are higher level outcome focused in nature. and there'll be opportunities when we get to the periodic reviews of specific sectors where we will look into more details around sector-specific conditions and those site-specific aspects, and there'll be a lot more interaction at a more one-to-one level in those cases.
All right, we've got a question here. When the licence review takes place, will additional conditions be added to our existing licence?
So, as Tim just mentioned, we have two different types of reviews going on. So at the moment, we're focusing on the standard conditions, which again are used across the board. And then we'll be looking at sectors, let's say individually. So we have 42 sectors. Only one sector was looked at so far, which was the landfill sector. But we are targeting the other sectors for the coming 4 years. And maybe just to have a short overview of which sectors, we're starting with the mining sector this year, so everything related to power stations, extractive industry, and then the following 3 years we'll group several sectors per type of issue or discharge to the environment. So we're going to be starting with the waste sector, so everything related to composting or prescribed industrial waste management. Then we'll roll up to the air year, so either industries with discharge to air or other issues, this kind of things, so chemical works, food processing sites, and then we'll roll to the water year, so all the sites with water discharges, which will mostly be wastewater treatment plants. To get back to the question, during this standard condition review, we don't foresee adding any condition because, as said, it's just clarifying the existing conditions. Whereas when we're going to start going into the sector review, we will try to harmonize all the licenses within a sector, and this may lead to new conditions being applied to your license or removed from your license if the risk doesn't exist anymore. So I would say for the standard condition, the answer is no, but for the sectorial reviews, probably. But in that case, we'll have a one-on-one engagement with you around this.
Yeah, it's quite likely that when we get to the sector-specific reviews, that there'll be more specific components added into licenses, which is the approach we've taken through the landfill review process. But as Emily said, there's no brand new standard conditions proposed by us at this stage. It's really just modifications to the existing set. If you have other views on whether there should be additional standard conditions or not, whatnot, we're happy to hear those as well.
Okay, we've got another question here. In some situations, the EPA regulates sites that other regulators also regulate, for example, the extractive industry and so forth. Is there a thought being given to removing duplicating conditions, e.g. discharge licenses contain dust conditions which aren't related to the discharge operation?
So one of the key parts of when we get to sector reviews will be working with fellow regulators as well. So obviously, in looking at mining extractive industries, we'll be working closely with Earth Resources Regulation and trying to provide clarity between the different regulatory expectations from EPA as compared to other regulators. So definitely it'll be something that we look at and take into consideration.
Great, thanks Tim. And we've got another one here. Will we be able to review and amend premises boundaries through this process, or are we required to submit licence amendment applications?
I think during the standard conditions review, we're going to try and focus on standard conditions only because, as mentioned several times, there are a large number of licenses that we will be looking at now. And during the sectorial review, though, we're engaging with sites one-on-one, and we could be doing premises plan reviews then, for example. If you feel like you need to update your premises plan now and you're not part of the mining sector, I would suggest going for an amendment, a license amendment.
The key focus of the individual reviews when we get to sector specific will be the administrative information, which includes your premises plan, the legal entity details, all those sort of aspects. So it'd definitely be a focus then. But if, as Emily said, if there's issues in the meantime with your premises plan or other details, please get in touch and we can work through a license amendment process. You can apply for one of those and we can get it clarified and sorted.
All right, so that's it from the questions that we've received. If you do have another one, send it through pretty quick. Otherwise, I think we might wrap up. I'll just hand over to Tim.
All right, so really appreciate your time this morning. We hope this forum and approach by us has been an effective way of informing you about the periodic licence reviews work that is forthcoming and alerting you to how you can get involved. We are really keen that over the next month we hear from you and get your feedback on the conditions and the proposed changes, and any thoughts and input you've had. We've actually just had another question come through, and given we've got a couple minutes left on the clock, we'll address that now.
All right, so the question is, will current licence amendments going through have any changes to the standard conditions? So I believe that means if you have a current application with us, will there be a change to your standard licence conditions?
The review of the standard condition is going to take a couple more months. So if you have an application with us right now, the application will be processed through before we make any of the changes, but you will still have a new license issued when we do roll out all the new standard conditions.
Any more questions, Maddie?
Nope, that seems to
No? All right, we'll wrap up the webinar session there, and again, thank you for your time.